Hey, good morning. My name is Paul Lathrop, with you in terms of the robot in 3 days with Team Clutch. So really excited to talk about a lot of things we worked on over the past 72 hours. We finished up yesterday morning, of course. Learned a lot. Didn't necessarily get where we wanted to go, but learned a ton, and we know the season for both of our teams that we work with are going to be really strong. So we're going to talk through a couple of the different designs and prototype the students and the adults all work together and everything on. And then if anyone's watching there at home and has any questions, we'll be happy to answer any of them. So real quick, I just want to talk about some of the different mechanisms. So one of the mechanisms that we worked on in terms of prototyping, we'll go through the ones for the hatch panel first. So one of the ones that some of the students came up with was this little number. Basically, by pulling either string or essentially a pivot mechanism and everything right there with the pneumatic cylinder, it will open and close. So the way they're thinking about using that is essentially coming up to that human player station, being able to put it in, hooking it open, being able to pivot and what have you around it, and then when it is time to score, releasing and driving off of the mechanism to make it happen. So we like this one a lot. Again, a lot of our prototypes are kind of big and cumbersome, but we're just trying to get some good ideas out there for teams to be able to learn as much as possible over the course of the next couple of days. Similar concept, but a little differently, and we totally jerry-rigged this one up, but we also like the results that we saw from it. Similar concept for it. So panel, this right here is a piece of 2x1 80/20 with a mechanism from a couple years ago that we ended up converting to be able to insert into the panel, and then using some 80/20 slide mechanisms, being able to open it up and being able to get a nice grip and everything on it. So I'm gonna give you a close up of that real quick. So again, we're using these nice 80/20 sliders right here that are being able to pivot right on there. They've got the pneumatics along with some custom sheet metal parts from a couple of years ago on there. So it's one pneumatic cylinder that can open and close. Depending on how you set this up, you could even potentially grab the ball, which is one of the concepts that the kids have in terms of coming around the ball as well as inside in terms of the hatch panel. Believe it or not, we actually went back to our Armabot vacuum. So if you watched one of the day one recap videos, we talked about how we saw some promise out of it, but wasn't really thinking it was going to be able to be what we wanted for it. We actually had a group of students that just didn't want to give up on it, which is awesome. So we had one of our brand new students on the rookie team had this nice little coupler. So it's just 3D printed in terms of that. This is a dollar store plunger that we were able just to cut a nice little circle out of without any epoxy or anything whatsoever. It just kind of clips all together on there, making this nice little kind of vacuum funnel. It's a little loose right now, but even with the tolerance, a little bit of issue and everything we're having with it, and the rather cheap plunger or cup that we're using, everything with it, it is able to grab the panel when we give it power, as well as the ball. One thing that we are noticing with the cup itself, since it doesn't have a lot of give, as we translate the motion 90 degrees or more, it's just pulling the cup off. So as soon as we lose, obviously suction and everything, we aren't able to hold the ball anymore and we drop it. So again, with the right cup and with a little bit of epoxy and everything onto it, teams to be able to grab both elements, everything with the Armabot vacuum using a red line 80 mark motor, which is one of the items that we got in our kit from 80 mark. All right. Real quick, I'm going to show one of our other very rough prototypes. So one of the things we think is going to be really important is doing a stage 3 climb. So we're talking about doing this a couple different ways in terms of pneumatics pushing down or some sort of a tank intake up front that'd be able to help us traverse up front. But not only is this an amazing prototype, but the prototype is actually currently what the camera is on. So I'm going to move the camera real quick just so you can get a feel for what the prototype looks like. So right here, we've got a couple pieces of 80/20. We're running 2 of the RS775 Pro motors. So right there. Again, these can be substituted for the Andy Mark Redline motors, going into a Versa with just some solid gears there. Got a 3/8 gear as well as there we go, as well as a 1/2-inch one on this axle. This metal here is just 2x1 channel, just some of our random scrap metal and everything we've been using, along with some of the hubs and everything that we can get from Andy Mark using the kit parts. The concept here with this particular design was that we were going to be able to push down on the platform and kind of rotate up in the air, similar to that of how some of the teams did it at the World Championship for 2010 Breakaway. So they were able to push down and flip up. So in Breakaway, what they did was there was actually a pipe. So they grabbed a hold of that pipe and then flipped around. So something that we're trying to investigate there. We really think that being able to solidify 12 points every single match is important, but more important is the fact that you only need one of the other two robots just to kind of cruise control up to the level 1 habitat platform. So by doing that with the level 1 and the level 3 guaranteed a ranking point every time, we're thinking that's really the way to go in terms of making it happen, in terms of making an impact in terms of the standings. Real quick, I'm just going to bring over our frame that we've been working on the past couple days. So just the camera here in just a moment. We'll take a quick tour of the robot. All right, so we used the newest version of the Andy Mark kit frame. So really excited about this. Again, gives teams really a lot of versatility in terms of design, in terms of if they're going a 4-wheel or a 6-wheel or an 8-wheel or whatever they want to do, right, in terms of that. One key feature before I dig too deep into the new rev motors and what have you is this battery mount is absolutely incredible. It's one of those things that I've been doing this 15 years, and teams often struggle to get a nice secure battery mount. This one is super lightweight, clips right on, and it's something that as long as you had those machine holes right on in here in terms of your design for whatever robot you have, you could purchase this kit from Andy Mark and be able to have a nice secure battery holder that none of the robot inspectors, including myself, would have any issue with. So really excited in terms of that. So just talking through the frame real quick, you're going to notice a couple modifications right off the bat with it. So we spent a solid amount of time with CAD for this robot. With that being said, we missed one fairly small but fairly large thing, which is that when we CAD'd it, we CAD'd to make sure that the pulleys on the wheels, the new 8-inch pneumatic wheels, fit, which they did. We liked it, but the one thing we didn't do was check in CAD in terms of running actual belts in CAD. So because of that, I'm going to move the camera just so you guys can see. You can see we are rubbing right up against that wheel. Now, that's obviously causing inefficiency and everything in terms of our drivetrain. It also creates a wonderful burning rubber smell, but it still technically works. One of the other things, well, let me just pause there. So the way we would combat this is we would open up this frame just a little bit more in terms of scooting that inside rail out a little bit, and being able to put some sort of a custom spacer similar with that hole pattern in terms of the belt and pulley, just to space it off just a scotch in terms of it. In addition, we struggled a little bit because we didn't necessarily have the right belt sizes that we needed for this project. So we really wanted to come right on in here and plop that bearing there and run our pulley and sprocket and what have you. And that was the plan. And then right around day 2, we determined that the belts that we had were either they're basically suffering from Goldilocks syndrome, where it was either too short or too long. So what we ended up doing was we CAD'd a small modification and plopped a bearing hole right here. We did lose a little bit of thickness right there, so we are in that hole a little bit, but we've got plenty of strength and structure right there to hold that bearing. So we ended up throwing these in our CNC, that Tormach 1100 CNC, and plopped it in there with a good CAD drawing. We're able to crank these out within about an hour to be able to make that happen. Now, with that being said, by modifying both the front and the rear wheel like that, we ended up having this slight gap up at the front, right? So if you look at that, that's probably about 2-inch gap or so right there that we are completely off the ground compared to the rear and the middle wheel. All right. So with that being said, we were able to get everything driving and everything last night during our meeting. This drivetrain right here, is able to easily get up, stage 1. We are in the process of finishing building stage 2 tonight, and feel really comfortable that with this 2-inch gap and these wheels being exposed, even with bumpers, that we would be able to traverse over stage 2 just with the drivetrain alone. So to put that in points perspective, right? So we're talking 6 for autonomous and 6 for the end game. So we're at 12 points just with this drivetrain, nothing else at all, right? So again, teams, do not overthink in terms of the point structure, points for simple drivetrain, right? If you don't have a drivetrain that is absolutely sound and isn't breaking down and is strong and everything, like, you're not, it doesn't matter what point scoring mechanism you put on top, right? We think this is a little goofy looking, but at the same time, once we put it into testing yesterday, it was really wild because it was able to get up the ramp so easy. Both teams are kind of looking through some different ideas in terms of drivetrains right now, whether they go an H drive or a mechanism drive or a drop center West Coast drive. So we're trying some different things in terms of CADing, in terms of the actual teams that we work with. But we really liked and learned a ton from this. We'll do a product review in terms of the wheels themselves here in the next couple days. And I said this in my first video, but these new Andy Mark 8-inch pneumatic wheels, the HD wheels, are night and day from the older version of them, the plastic ones. It is much sleeker in terms of design, but also just the amount of time it takes and ability to just put it all together is so much quicker. So really appreciate this. Team from Andy Mark, we love these wheels. And I have to imagine, teams, if you are looking for these, not knowing the inventory whatsoever that Andy Mark has, that you probably want to get some orders in here in the next couple days to make sure they don't sell out and you're waiting for wheels later in the season. But these are absolutely incredible wheels. Again, we use the 1/2-inch hex version of them. They also offer a 1 1/8 bearing hole version of them. So something to consider in terms of that. Back to the frame itself. So one thing that we did a little different is we ended up using the Rev Neo brushless motors. So give it a quick. So we just dropped them literally into our Tough Box Minis that come right on in with the kit of parts. So they are 110% as advertised. So they drop in just like a sim. We ended up having to, space this out just a little bit, right, because of the fatter wheel that we're using. But because of that, we're actually no different in terms of our usable real estate in between these two motors than if we had dropped a sim motor in there with the regular configuration in terms of the kit of parts. So we're really excited about that. We didn't have any issues mechanically with them. We didn't see any difference in terms of how they driving around last night. The one hurdle that we had, which Mike and the team at Rev Robotics helped us out yesterday afternoon, just helping us, make sure we had code and everything correct, is with the motor controllers. So these new, and yes, I know the electrical board is a little rough right now. The Spark Max, flip around that way, the Spark Max motor controllers, they are awesome. They drop the encoder cables in there. They have all the connectors and everything in terms that you're going to need. You can run them either PWM or CAN. Information about CAN should be released here by the end of the week. And Java resources will also be released here in the next couple days in terms of that. Teams, if you are playing with this, the way we did it and the way that Mike and the wonderful team at Rev Robotics was able to help get us straight in terms of that was to call it a Spark or a Victor in terms of your programming. So when you are programming them, you're not going to end up finding a Spark Max class, at least not today. So again, calling it a Spark or a Victor absolutely works. One key piece and part. When you plug these in, if you plug them in such that black is to red and red is to black, you get one freebie. And after that one freebie, your motor controller is basically a doorstop. So teams, please make sure that you guys are careful before you start powering systems up and making sure that you're not just flipping Anderson connectors over to change the polarity of the motors. Take the time, change it in the program, set it up, do it the right way, because if not, you will be purchasing an additional $75 controller for each one that you do it after that first mistake. We did make one mistake once. If you turn it on, you will hear a click sound, like click, 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 click. That means that you have plugged it in the wrong way and need to immediately turn everything off and flip that one or however many connectors it is. Can you get one shot, then doorstop. Teams, these motor controllers are available right now for you at Rev Robotics as well as through AndyMark with First Choice. So depending on what credits you have available, what your priorities are for the season, what adventure you want to embark on in terms of it, brushless motors and brushless motor controllers are available at First Choice, which is powered through AndyMark. So something cool and everything to think of in terms of that. Also through First Choice right now, if you haven't already looked, they have everything from game pieces to bearings, all sorts of great things that teams can use and you can use in prototyping as well as your final assembly. Well, real quick before we go, we have one more prototype to talk through, and that is our cargo prototype. So this was our cargo prototype. Let's scoot the camera down just a scotch. All right, so we like this prototype a lot. We ended up playing with it in terms of just trying to power it with just some rails. We're starting to see more of a triangle or box kind of approach with it. We are using the AndyMark 4-inch dual Omni wheels right here at the bottom of the assembly. The reason we put these on here was we wanted it to not necessarily rest on the floor. We wanted to be able to pivot and not drag all over the carpet in terms of it. This 2x1 is purchased through AndyMark. So again, it's at 16th wall thickness. We did slightly have an issue in terms of pressing a bearing that wasn't quite ready for it and everything. So we did have a small bend and everything to it. But again, just making sure you get those tolerances right in terms of your CAD. All of this was CADed and dropped into our CNC. So once our CNC is brand new, right, in terms of what we're doing with it, how we're operating. But these rails were each set were completed within about an hour or so, including from CAD to production, we got them done in an hour through our Tormach CNC. So we're really excited about that. We used churro wherever we could, both to lighten up weight with this assembly, as well as it was one of the amazing things that you can get at AndyMark. So we're really excited about that. We used PVC, half-inch PVC wherever we could in terms of spacers. Typically, we would use either shaft collars or clip rings or what have you, but we ended up using PVC just for real quick and in a hurry, and we could just kind of cut to fit in terms of that. Our intake wheels, we ended up using 2 4-inch AndyMark compliant wheels, and then 2 of the 3 1/4 AndyMark compliant wheels. So we got these in our parts through AndyMark. We are also using a redline motor from AndyMark into a versaplanetary gearbox with a gear ratio of 9:1. So this thing's coming along. We do a small piece of Lexan right here at the bottom, and we have this nice piece of foam here with the idea of just kind of holding in place. To take this one step further, what we would do, as you see, we kind of have a rock here. We would end up driving either supports and another Omni wheel down here towards the back, or kind of triangulate this system and everything with it. We really want to get this more locked in as opposed to just kind of flopping out there and being pushed on the floor. But we're really excited about it. We will have our reveal video here in the next couple of days. The reason we have these wheels spaced out like this is so that it just comes right along the surface of the ball. So it's intaking the ball here. As you can see, it just kind of fits in just like that. And as we have that nice platform in there, we're able to go up we're actually able to see that, as we raise and we have the compression constant here, that we're able to shoot the ball about 2 to 3 feet with this gear ratio up into the air. So again, we're thinking in terms of teams that are going minimum concept, this could just pivot and you could shoot into your cargo ship in terms of that. So really excited about this prototype. Really looks cool. We ended up putting this universal hole pattern here, which is just a bunch of 5/16 holes, so we could drop core hardware where we needed, and just try different spacing with it. Final production of this would end up having some sort of lightning pattern, triangles or holes or something like that, while maintaining the structural integrity. One quick thing, we did put a pool noodle over a piece of churro here just to hold the ball here prior to it hitting our hardware here. We didn't want to pop the wonderful piece of cargo in the process. So real quick, I see a couple comments. Just want to make sure I'm answering them before we sign off. How have the Neos performed in the drive? Any sign of stuttering? We did not see any issues in terms of it. Something important to mention there, Preston, is that we drove just with a drive base, right? So we didn't have all the weight in terms of it, but we didn't have any issues in terms of seeing any stuttering or what have you. Talking with the wonderful folks at Rev, there are a few bugs and everything in terms of software approach, but those bugs are going to be alleviated in the update that will be released to teams and released on their website in terms of software guides by the end of the week, early next week. So feel really good about that. Yep, there you go, Kyle. And that's one thing important, Kyle, to talk through and everything, is that there was a firmware update and everything yesterday. We downloaded our firmware again yesterday during one of the troubleshooting steps, so that very well may be why we didn't see those issues and everything in terms of it. Anyone else have any questions real quick before we sign off? As always, you can reach me through our team Twitter handle at FRC7429. We're a rookie team with all of Chesterfield County Public Schools participating. My personal Twitter handle at Paul E. Lathrop, Lathrop at Twitter, as well as Paul E. Lathrop at gmail.com. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, everything for you. May have missed it, but did you show your plunger mechanism or did you scrap it? So I'll show that just real quick again. So Kyle, I would love to tell you that we had an amazing plunger for this particular mechanism. We ended up using, it's like a miniature plunger that you can get at the dollar store. It was just something that one of the parents picked up for us. And we ended up just making a converter right here. So one of the kids added a converter to that Armabot vacuum. So it's a nice COTS kit that you can purchase. It is really quick to assemble in terms of the kit itself and just uses one motor. That funnel could be made out of a number of PVC components in terms of just kind of reducing it out and getting it there. And then the biggest thing is once we solidify, hey, this is what we want, just using some sort of epoxy to clean up in terms of the air and everything in terms of that. We'll get videos in terms of these picking up again until we replace this particular cup. Transferring motion from, down low if I'm picking up a panel or a ball from the ground and flipping it up to be able to score. This motion here, this cup isn't flexible enough, so it ends up just kind of flopping. And when it does that, it releases whatever we're ending up holding in terms of it. But it absolutely 110%, even with the dollar store plunger, can pick up off the ground this or the ball and be able to hold it. You can wiggle it, all of that stuff. It's just once you get to about, let's say about there, that plunger just kind of doesn't have enough flexibility. There are, as we've seen over the course of the years, tons of different silicone cups from different vendors that you can use. We've seen those in games like Rack and Roll or Logo Motion and some other very innovative teams in some of the other games. But those are the two games that I've really seen teams use those silicone cups in terms of making it happen. One thing that one of the other teams that we house here in this facility, Team 1080, was talking about was, what if you have two of these? Obviously, having two of these would work. And here's what's different than some of those other vacuum mechanisms that we've seen before is a lot of the times they're using pneumatics, right? So there's only but so much pulling and pushing that we can do with these Armabot kits, or you can make your own even, right? Using this, the amount of pressure that I'm pulling in and everything with it is distinct to this mechanism. So if I have several of them, I'm getting the same suction at each one. I'm not getting some sort of subset of that. But yeah, good question. Good question in terms of that. Any other questions I can answer for anyone before we head out? We're waiting. We're waiting. No? All right. As always, please feel free to hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, or shoot an email to me. We are really excited. One important thing to understand is that everything you've seen here was built in about 34 hours. So we had 72 hours, right, to do a robot in 3 days. We actually only worked 34, although it felt like 72 straight. If we did this again next year, which I think we are, then one thing we will do is absolutely do more shift work so that there's kind of an A team and a B team and that we're using every bit of those 72 hours. And then again, the other tip we really learned was just CAD in terms of every detail, in terms of running belts or chain or whatever it is. Just putting a sprocket and saying, okay, they are in line is not enough, because when you have something thick like a belt, sometimes you get the rubbage like we have. But really excited, learned a ton. All of the students are excited. All the mentors are excited. So just really want to thank all of everyone for watching and tuning in. We plan on doing a lot of other kind of videos and everything and question and answer throughout the season. We're going to keep going with this project, but we'll end up showing you guys kind of, pieces and parts working in terms of the drivetrain and these mechanisms off of the robot. That way you get a feel for kind of what was done in those 30 hours. And one thing that we really kind of hammered out with the kids and with the adults was that, hey, we did this in 30, 34 hours, right? So if we can do this in 30, 34 hours and we can maintain this energy and this commitment and everything to it, sky's the limit in terms of, the 6-week build season. So really excited about that. Definitely want to thank again, Andy Mark team, Andy Baker for having an amazing company in terms of that. Ruth, who has been absolutely incredible in terms of working with me and trying to get more and more of this live stream put together. That's something that we'll absolutely work with in terms of this season, as well as next year. When we do it next year, is just really getting better quality video and better streams and everything in terms of that. And then Danny, everything he did in terms of just making the robot in 3 days choice going in. And similar to first choice, we had to select which parts and everything with a number of credits we wanted to kind of showcase and use. So really excited about that. Really thankful for the opportunity. Hopefully it was a lot of good information for teams, and cannot stress enough. We'll be throwing out our CAD and we'll come up with a white paper and everything in terms of just lessons learned and everything with it here in the next week, just trying to make it happen. But today will be our first day off in about 5 days. So we had parent meetings and team meetings and everything going into Saturday. So this will be the first day. We're excited because most of us have only slept about 15, 20 hours over the past 4 days tops. So we're really excited. And again, thank you guys for watching. Appreciate it. Have a good one.